Hello there, friends. Welcome back to another episode of Generation Tech. My name is Alan. I don't like Kaminoans. They remind me of dolphins. Walking, talking dolphins, and they have a pretty messed up history of genetic engineering and cloning that really just doesn't jive with my personal morals and ethics. But even I have to admit the cloning program for the Grand Army of the Republic was a smashing success. Despite having very little empathy or understanding for what it means to be humans, the Kaminoans somehow diluted the complexity of our species into a series of genetic markers and managed to pick and choose the perfect set of genes to create the perfect soldier. I mean, really, if you think about it, the clone troopers are the ultimate soldier in all of Star Wars. I don't really think any other individual groups could stand up to them in a, face-to-face battle. The average clone trooper is exceptionally skilled, completely fearless. He has enough independence to be unpredictable and defeat the enemy on the battlefield, but at the same time, he's still extremely loyal to the Republic and his fellow troopers. In some ways, I'd probably trust a clone trooper more than a Jedi with my life. The fact that Palpatine had to install inhibitor chips into the brains of these men in order to try and control them shows us just how perfect they were. I think there was a real fear that the clones wouldn't obey Palpatine's orders to kill their own Jedi commanders and carry out Order 66. That's just how strong their internal moral compass was believed to be. As in, Palpatine was afraid that the clones might do the right thing and disobey an illegal or just morally wrong order. But even the perfect soldier can be manipulated. They can be tricked into believing a version of the galaxy that wasn't actually real. They can be fed bad and false information. And that was easy for Palpatine to do because the clones were relatively isolated from the general public. He could basically control all the information they were getting. Maybe the inhibitors as a redundancy wasn't even necessary because of this. Also, not all the Jedi leaders were good at their jobs. Some were even cruel and uncaring towards their men. We have individuals like General Ponkrell and Quinlan Vos, for instance. It's really not that far-fetched to think that Palpatine could control the clone troopers and execute Order 66 even without the inhibitor chips. But that's not what happened, of course. There were inhibitor chips, and when Order 66 happened, we don't really know which clones would have hesitated to carry out the order if the inhibitor chips weren't in their heads. But what we do have are some very clear examples of clones defecting from the Empire after Order 66, or shortly after, because they just rejected what was happening. And so today we're going to be taking a look at 3 different clones who all defected from the Empire, and we're going to try to isolate qualities in their personality and experiences that might have just made them more resistant against tyranny and authoritarianism. Captain Rex is very much the prime clone of the entire Star Wars franchise. He has a lot of main character energy about him, from dual-wielding pistols to having a pretty significant character arc. Rex starts off his career as like a no-nonsense clone. He is the embodiment of what the Kaminoans want from a clone trooper, efficient, obedient, and extremely disciplined. But if we take a closer look at Rex, he's a far more complicated character. He's not just a blind follower. He's always had his own specific code and set of rules that he's deferred to. He's an independent thinker. He respected the hierarchy of the military and all of the, structure that it gave him, but at the same time, he never really gave his highest level of personal trust to an individual unless he could vouch for their character and ability.
So, if you're a captain and I'm a Jedi, then technically I outrank you, right?
In my book, experience outranks everything.
As a result, when he runs into the deserter Cut Lawquane, he initially considers turning the clone into the Grand Army of the Republic, but he doesn't take rash action, partly because he has a pretty, gnarly chest wound, but also because this is who Captain Rex is. He has the capability of making quick, decisive action when it's needed, but he also has the ability to slow things down and assess things properly so he doesn't make the wrong choices. What results is a very interesting series of conversations between Captain Rex and Cut Lawquane about, service duty and a lot of other things. You see, Cut Lawquane isn't your typical deserter. He didn't run away from combat because he was terrified or because he wanted to abandon his duty. What happened was the transport ship he was on was shot down and his entire unit was basically killed. He was the lone survivor. That close brush with death opened up his eyes to the reality of his life situation, and he, basically takes a different route. He no longer wants to just live for someone else's, struggles and goals. He wants to start a life of his own. And that results in him having a family. And so when he talks to Captain Rex, he tries to explain to Captain Rex what he's done here, how he's created this life and how important it is to him. He also asks Rex if he's ever considered himself what his life would be like if he actually had a choice in the matter.
I've seen how you look at my family, our home. Come on, Rex, admit it. You've thought about what your life could look like if you would also leave the army.
At first, Captain Rex is defensive, and I think most of us would be because Cut Lawquane is challenging the very fabric of his existence, his purpose, because service for Captain Rex is everything.
What if I am choosing the life I want? What if I'm staying in the army because it's meaningful to me? And how is it meaningful? Because I'm part of the most pivotal moment in the history of the Republic.
See, that's the 18-year-old Rex, or I guess the 9-year-old Rex, speaking out loud. And it reminds me a lot of myself when I was like 9 years old. I remember the United States had launched an invasion against Iraq and Afghanistan, and I was super gung-ho. I was really stoked about spreading democracy and getting revenge for what they did to New York City. And I was like spewing out talking points from the party just like Captain Rex was. What does he say here? This line, I'm a part of the most pivotal moment in the history of the Republic. If only he knew.
If we fail, then our children and their children could be forced to live under an evil I can't well imagine.
Cut Lawquane points out to Rex that the Republic won't allow him to have children because he's not allowed to desert and start a family. And because Captain Rex is like a reasonable, rational individual who's willing to set aside his ego when he's wrong, because, combat's life and death situations. You can't have an ego that puts you into dangerous situations. So in this case, Captain Rex realizes that what he just said was kind of stupid, and I think that starts opening his mind a little bit to Cut Lawquane's point of view. Ultimately, Rex doesn't turn Cut Lawquane in. He's partly thankful to the clone for saving his life. They even fought together against a Separatist patrol. Captain Rex came to respect Cut. He wasn't a coward, someone who was trying to run away from a fight or responsibility. No, Cut was just a man who was looking for purpose and found it in starting a family, and even Captain Rex, who's new to such things, can see how complete Cut has become as a result. Everyone is brainwashed in the JAR, and it's hard to resist that kind of groupthink mentality, especially when their existence is directly tied to their service. Even if Captain Rex doesn't realize it at this moment, a lot of the ideas that he's discussed with Cut have, burrowed deep into his mind, and they will once again resurface once he learns more about the world and, has more experiences that teaches him, what exactly life is about as a clone trooper. As the war continues, Captain Rex sees many clones die in the pursuit of the Republic's objectives. The Umbara campaign was especially difficult for Rex. He was used to serving beneath General Anakin Skywalker, a Jedi who was risky and bold, got a lot of his men killed needlessly at times, but Anakin fought with the men in the front. He earned their respect. If not for that, he was also immensely capable. And for every risky frontal charge Anakin led, he followed it up with a truly smart tactical or strategic decision that did save lives and help the clones achieve their objectives quicker. And most importantly, Anakin trusted his troops. He oftentimes confided in Captain Rex about tactical decisions. He let the clone lead his own detachments and take control of important parts of the plan. Anakin was an extremely demanding officer, but he was also an individual who truly cared about the men that served beneath him. When General Ponkrell took over the command on Umbara from Anakin, it was a shock for many of the men, including Captain Rex. Not only did Ponkrell treat Rex like a lesser being, he also didn't seem to care much about taking casualties and getting his men killed. For the first time, Captain Rex was conflicted. The needs of his men no longer matched the needs of his commanding officer. Captain Rex walks a fine line, keeps his men orderly, but at the same time he desperately tries to keep the 501st safe. But Ponkrell's actions become more extreme and unpredictable, and Rex is finally forced to make the hardest decision for any clone to make, and that is take part in a mutiny, which ultimately uncovers that Ponkrell is in cahoots with the Sith. It seems like all throughout his career, Captain Rex has always made the right choice somehow. His good judgment is a result of high intelligence, patience, open-mindedness, and a certain level of ego death. And so as the world unravels around him in the last year of the Clone Wars, with horrific events like Umbara and the inhibitor chip conspiracy with Fives and Tup, instead of panicking, instead of being overwhelmed, instead of clinging on to what, little was left of his role in the Republic, Captain Rex pivots. He begins to awaken to the situation around him. Captain Rex starts off being blindly loyal to the Republic. Minbara changes things and he begins to shift that loyalty to the men, the soldiers he grew up with and served alongside. But then Order 66 happens and he's forced to confront the horrific truth that the men he served alongside were now controlled and brainwashed into attacking their Jedi commanders. It's because of Captain Rex's extremely strong will that he was one of the only clones able to resist the effects of the inhibitor chips, even if for a moment. He then proceeds to kill his brothers and protect Ahsoka from certain death. It's at that point his loyalty shifts from his men to just what's right. In the aftermath of the fall of the Republic, Captain Rex would build an underground resistance movement designed to free the clones from their oppressors. Captain Rex is a hero, probably one of the purest ones in the entire franchise. Unlike various Jedi and politicians and rebels we run into, there is no real dark side to Captain Rex, no fundamental flaws or darkness. He's a perfect clone designed for war, and he applies his astute reasoning skills to everything around him, allowing him to always make the right decision and avoid potential moral pitfalls. Anakin was bold, reckless, and fought with his emotions on full display, and the 501st with their face tattoos and painted helmets reflected that aspect of their commander. Anakin's old master, Obi-Wan Kenobi, was the complete opposite from him, cool, calm, and collected, if not a bit cautious on the battlefield. And his unit, the 212th Attack Battalion, really did reflect this aspect of his personality. And his second-in-command, Commander Cody, learned as much from him as Rex learned from Anakin. Now, Kenobi's no stranger to emotions. Like, in his youth, he fell in love with the eventual Duchess of Mandalore, Satine Kryze. But he walked away from that relationship from true love, and since that moment, he's really been just a model Jedi. He is skilled in Form 3, the defensive shell technique of combat, which always is reflected in his command style. He's far more cautious and reactive to the enemy's movements rather than being proactive. He really likes preparing for battles and having good intel. He respects the hierarchy of the military and also the Jedi Order, even if that means going against his own personal interests. This is also why there's a lot of tension between him and Anakin, because Obi-Wan Kenobi is willing to defer to the Jedi Council even when they go against his apprentice. Now, Obi-Wan Kenobi believes in democracy in the Republic. He understands the fundamental mandate of the Jedi to keep the galaxy safe, and this lesson has been fully passed off to Commander Cody. And the 212th Attack Battalion is immensely successful because of this culture established by Obi-Wan Kenobi. Cody learned that doing things the right way always pays off at the end. And so as the galaxy begins to crumble around Commander Cody towards the end of the war, instead of waking up, Commander Cody leans in more to his training, into the system that has long served as a home for him. And so that means during the Battle of Utapau, shortly after retrieving Kenobi's lightsaber form, Order 66 is carried out, and Commander Cody orders an AT-AT tank to kill his general. Just like how Obi-Wan Kenobi cut the legs and arms off of his own apprentice Anakin Skywalker, Commander Cody will not hesitate when carrying out an order. He is able to put aside his personal feelings and emotional connections and execute. Commander Cody is the consummate professional, but he lacks the, self-assuredness and is it intelligence that Captain Rex has? But he does have a similar moral compass to Rex, and as he continues to serve the Empire, he starts to notice that the Empire is experiencing some moral decay, especially the armed services. During an operation to the former Separatist world of Dessex, he and a team of clone troopers along with Clone Commander Crosshair carry out a difficult assault on a fortress. The mission ends with a standoff with the Separatist governor. Captain Rex manages to de-escalate the situation and promises the governor a fair trial if she stands down, and stops any further bloodshed. Commander Cody gives the Separatist his word, but moments after she surrenders, Crosshair is instructed by another Imperial officers to execute the Separatists, which he does. I don't think this is the main reason why Commander Cody went AWOL. I mean, it definitely really shook him that this is what happened. Like, he made a deal with someone and someone else just shot that person. But I think this was the straw that broke the camel's back. Commander Cody was not a bad man, he was just a good and obedient soldier. And at one point, the complete, utter lack of professionalism by Imperial forces, their lack of morals, their lack of honesty was just too much for him. Remember, Commander Cody actually believed in security and prosperity and peace for the galaxy, like a lot of clones did. He was just smart enough to see that the Empire was not going to deliver that. And if Captain Rex was the heart of the Grand Army of the Republic, then Commander Cody was like the spine that held the clone army together. People like him made up the backbone. And so if Commander Cody deserts, the backbone and the structure of the entire army, it shows us that the clones are probably incompatible with the future the Empire wants to create. Lastly, we have Captain Hauser. He was deployed to Ryloth at some point in the war and would serve alongside General Champ Sandula and his resistance movements. Over the course of the conflict, Hauser grew to really respect the tenacity and bravery of the Twi'leks, seeing them as fellow combatants and brothers in arms. It seems like while Captain Rex and Commander Cody were spirited around the galaxy from one hotspot to another, Captain Hauser was just focused on this one sector. And just like how Cut Lawquane developed a fondness for the Twi'lek people, it seems like Hauser transformed his camaraderie with the Twi'lek resistance into a true love for the people as well. Captain Hauser felt not only responsible for his own men, but also for the Twi'leks he helped free and protect. Also, as a clone, as someone born in a test tube in a sterile environment, seeing how the Twi'leks lived in their tribal societies with rich culture and connections to the planet, I think Captain Hauser began to admire the Twi'leks and also absorb their culture as he lacked his own. I mean, a similar thing happened to clone commandos that were introduced to Mandalorian trainers. They immediately soaked up all of the Mandalorian culture, like the warrior creed, the way they spoke, their love for certain type of weapons. As a matter of fact, a lot of those clone commandos would retire on Mandalore after war and start their own families. It seems like the Kaminoans couldn't suppress the natural need to develop a strong identity, one that is real and isn't just manufactured by a bunch of dolphin aliens. And because of his strong connection to the Twi'lek people, Hauser was unable to dehumanize the Twi'leks when the Empire wanted him to do so. As the situation on Ryloth became more tense between the Empire and the Twi'leks, Hauser tried his best to de-escalate the situation. When young Hera Syndulla is found sneaking around in a restricted area, Hauser doesn't detain the young girl and just brings her back to her father. He tries his best to delay Imperial orders to crack down on the Twi'leks, and ultimately he sides with them when he's given an order to arrest Cham Syndulla's family. It's not so surprising that later when the Empire creates the Stormtrooper Corps, they purposely try to distance the soldiers from the populace so that there is no connection, there is no emotional bond that can form. You really don't want your oppressors to humanize the people they're oppressing. Captain Hauser developed empathy and care for the Twi'leks. He saw them as valuable living beings, and that's what made him so dangerous to the Empire, which of course does not value life. It only wants control and power. Emperor Palpatine sees the average citizen as an asset or a commodity or as a mob he needs to trick and control. And so ultimately, 3 different clones, 3 different personalities and experiences that all lead to them defecting from the Empire. Captain Rex always had a very strong internal moral compass. He was an independent-minded individual who was extremely intelligent, and that led to him always making the right choices and avoiding moral pitfalls. He would defect because of this. Commander Cody was extremely disciplined and principled, but eventually realized that the order and stability he had been fighting for all his life would not come beneath Imperial rule. When Cody realized that the Empire at its core was chaotic and corrupt, he also left. And then finally, Captain Hauser, he fell in love with the culture and the people he was supposed to oppress. His courage and bravery meant that he was willing to die before he brutalized a group of people he had so much respect for. So there you have it, guys. 3 different clones who were very much in the heart of the Empire. They were surrounded by Imperial propaganda, by clones who were more than ready to do their duty, but somehow these 3 men were able to do the right thing, turn against their own way of life and throw everything behind. And I think that is probably one of the most respectful things you can do, one of the bravest things you can do as a character in Star Wars. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to subscribe and hit that notification button down below so you don't miss on the rest of our awesome content. As usual, my name is Alan, reminding you that my allegiance is to the Republic, to democracy. I'll see you next time.